All right, everyone. So we are en route to Zurich and we are going to have an interview with Alessandro Rocca from Starmind. And Starmind has been developing an AI for the last decade that is capable of clustering the skill set and knowledge of every employee for everyone within the same company. That is a huge mission, and I'm very curious about how they get the job done. Without further introduction, let's get started. Welcome to the UX.TAXI. Today we're going to talk about AI again, and therefore I'm welcoming Alessandro. Hey, nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. Always good with this weather outside. It's summer. It's the good time of the year.
Oh yes, it is. Beautiful weather. I would show you the lake, but that's quite impossible out of the car. And today we are going to talk about your company, where you're working at, which is Starmind. But before that, maybe you want to introduce yourself and I'll start driving.
Cool. So my name is Alessandro. I work in business development for Starmind, being responsible for the German-speaking part of Europe. Have been with the company for over 1.5 years now. And it's quite a funny story how I got to know Starmind, because I used to sit on the other side of the pendulum. I was working for a big Swiss bank and was put on a project some years back, where I was responsible to roll out Starmind for the business unit I was working for, and just fell in love with the company, I remember. And a couple of years back, the circle closed, and I got the opportunity to work for Starmind.
Oh, was that still a startup at that time or already bigger?
Actually, it was still a startup. I remember that the Swiss bank I was working for was actually the first big client that Starmind ever had.
Okay.
So that was quite exciting. I got to know one of the founders early on, and I was just amazed by what they can do and what is possible.
So, was it a big cultural shock from a bank going to a startup like that? I mean, tech startups are known to be quite different in matter of culture and stuff, and faster, but is it just a myth, or how did you experience that change?
I mean, actually, Starmind was not my first startup that I worked for. I actually had another experience in Munich before that, but of course it was a big change, and it was not just moving from a corporation to a startup. It was moving out of banking, going into tech, and that was actually also what I was looking for. I wanted to go out and break the boundaries of the stiffness that you usually find in large corporations, and really be able to have an impact, and to really see that what I do matters to the company, to the performance of the company. And yeah, of course, that was a big cultural change.
Absolutely. And what exactly are you doing at Starmind?
So I am responsible to win new clients for Starmind, and also to promote Starmind on a larger level, on a larger scale. So also doing keynote speeches from time to time, presenting Starmind at conferences. So rather in the, let's say, outgoing sector of Starmind, representing Starmind to the broader public. All right, so this is your stage. This is your first car pitch. Here you go. What is Starmind doing? What's the big difference of this AI company to any other? So I think in a couple of sentences, what Starmind does is we use artificial intelligence to make human intelligence better available inside of big companies. And we do that by using an algorithm that we have developed, which at all times knows who knows what in your company, and which lets you do 3 things. Number 1, it lets you identify experts with one click, independently from where they sit or what team they belong to. It lets you access the knowledge and the know-how that they have, and it lets you close skill gaps, because Starmind also shows you an overall view of your skill situation, also that independently from any manual interventions, purely using AI.
All right, so let's start with the last one. If I'm a CEO or chief strategy officer and I know where the company has to go, Starmind or the AI, the algorithm, can tell me if I have the right skill set or not by identifying the people who are working there.
That is correct. I mean, I can tell you a little story about that. When you look at the 500 biggest companies at the S&P 500 in the US,
yes,
and you look at their valuation, so how much is or are these companies worth, and you take a closer look and look at the driver of the valuation, you see a big difference looking at the year 1985 and comparing that to the year 2018. The big difference is that back then, the main driver for valuation used to be the so-called tangible assets of a company. So everything that you can touch, real estate, machines, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Fast forward to 2018, this has completely changed. The main driver for valuation of large companies has become the so-called intangible assets. So everything that you cannot touch, like intellectual property, like patents that you might have, or like human capital. So the human beings inside of a company. And you can also see that when you look at which companies have the highest valuations in the US, you see that nowadays it's the Googles, the Facebooks, and the Apples of this world, and not big oil companies or similar companies that have the highest valuation. Now, when you take another step further and you look at what these companies actually know about their tangible and their intangible assets, you can see that there's a mismatch. Still today, companies have a lot of data and they know a lot about their so-called tangible assets. They have a lot of data about their machines, the efficiency of their real estate, and so on and so forth, but they have little to no data about their most precious and most important asset, the human being. And that's where Starmind comes in. Starmind tries to close that gap, because so far, understanding who knows what, having an exact overview of your skills was very, let's say, manual. It was done over interviews, feedback loops, and so on and so forth. Maybe people who were just keeping their personal skill profile up to date manually, but that was never actually up to date. So this is what Starmind is doing. And coming back to your question, yes, exactly. If you have a clear idea where your company wants to go, you also need a clear idea where your company is at the moment. And this is what Starmind brings you, an independent overview of the skills of your company.
So indirectly or directly, you're saying that actually most of the biggest companies out there are not people-centric or employee-centric, because they don't actually know who's working there. They only know what the output is.
Exactly.
So you're bringing awareness to this? Or are you actually creating the mindset within those companies to focus on that even more?
I wouldn't say that most companies are not human-centric. However, so far they were just lacking the technology to actually access more insights into their people.
Right.
So that's also something that kind of differentiates Starmind. The first day you start at Starmind, you get a t-shirt. And the t-shirt says Starmind in the front, and it says Team Human in the back.
Team Human.
Yeah, because most AI companies actually try to automate as much as possible, leaving the human being out of the equation.
Yes.
Starmind uses technology to actually augment people's intelligence, human intelligence. And by doing that, it also refocuses maybe or reshapes the focus of companies back to employees. And it's not only us kind of telling them that they should do it, they also realize themselves, but they kind of miss the link of understanding their people. And this is where Starmind comes in.
Wow, okay. Very convincing answer. Is that how does the AI actually know about me as an employee, about my skill set? I mean, what is it doing to get to know me, part of Team Human?
That's also a very good question. So what we have seen is that most companies already use a series of tools where people actually leave snippets and pieces of information which already tell you a lot about these people. I'll make you an example. If you were putting together a document and you saved it on a SharePoint, for example, and then I, as a human being, come in and read that document, I can interpret what kind of skills you need to have in order to being able to actually create this document. Now, Starmind is doing exactly this. We take a look at the tool landscape of a company and try to find out where users actually leave snippets of information which give you a hint about their skill set. And then we use so-called connectors to actually connect to these data sources and analyze the data that is in there, capturing the topics that people interact with and transforming them into skills and skill profiles for every single employee. And we do that by, of course, only, let's say, analyzing GDPR compliant data. So it's not that we go into data sources where people actually discuss confidential information or where people are having, for example, one-to-one conversations on Slack or Teams or whatever. We only access information which is readable by the major part of the employees and actually let that information be analyzed by our algorithm.
All right, so you're not reading emails, but databases. Like, I don't know, Salesforce maybe? What tools are we talking about, to be more concrete with that? Like,
there are like 5, let's say, categories of tools that we usually take a look at. I can quickly go through them. Number 1 is calendar systems. So we kind of analyze which person is part of which meeting by analyzing the meeting title and maybe the description of the meeting. Always only, of course, analyzing publicly seeable or readable appointments, so no private appointments. Second category are HR systems, where we typically analyze CVs which are stored there. Third category are document management systems like SharePoint or other systems where we analyze documents that are stored there. Number 4 is collaboration systems like Teams, like Slack, and so on. There, for example, we never read one-to-one conversations. We only read or let's say learn from public groups and channels where everybody has access to. And number 5 is what you also were telling or saying, the so-called industry-specific systems like Salesforce or ERP systems, and that is really individual then.
Yes. So with each customer, you are creating individual systems within the algorithm to be more precise with the output.
Exactly. And the cool thing is that Starmind does not need a standardized ontology or skill ontology to actually put together the skill maps. Of course, we use some public databases to actually help the algorithm. However, the main advantage is that Starmind actually learns from, or let's say, creates these skill maps individually for each customer, having an individualized ontology which is put into the context of every single company, and also follows, we always call it the job structure that is already there in existing companies. So it is very, very individualized and very different from what other companies are doing when it comes to skill management.
Wow. Okay. So let's have a look at the employee benefits. So if I have a question, like, I don't know, any question that I'm not skilled for, I can type it into Starmind and it's already giving me the answer if it's answered somewhere else. Is that right? And if not, it's at least giving me the expert to ask. Or
that's, I mean, you're very close, but something needs to be differentiated. Starmind really focuses on the human part of expertise and of knowledge, meaning that when we connect to other data sources, we are not trying to take knowledge and reshape it and make it available. We actually do this with the sole purpose of understanding the users better and creating the skill maps. So for the end user of Starmind, you have the possibility to either look for an expert right away, meaning that you know that you need an expert for artificial intelligence, for a certain tool, and that maybe also has some insights about a certain market. You can just, let's say, shoot these 3 topics at Starmind, and Starmind shows you the best fitting experts to that set of, let's say, skills that you are looking for. That's number 1. Number 2 is what you were just saying. You can also just ask a question directly to Starmind and just say, hey, I have a question. You type it in natural language, and Starmind will use that question, capture the tags of that question, and actually then assign the question to the best fitting experts, matching the tags from the question with the skill tags that we already have in Starmind, bringing expert and question author together. Now, if many people actually interact on Starmind directly and ask questions, answer questions, and so on and so forth, Starmind also starts to build up, we call it a company brain or a corporate brain, which captures more and more of that undocumented knowledge, the knowledge that is usually sitting in people's minds and in people's heads. And the more you use Starmind will then also be able to answer questions right away if it has already been answered. What Starmind is not doing is that we're not going into data sources and trying to, let's say, get answers from documents or whatever. That's something that many competitors are doing. The problem most of the times is that how can you have a reliable, let's say, basis of data? How can the algorithm know if the answer that is retrieving now is still current, is still up to date, is still relevant? I mean, maybe you have seen this too when you use Google. Sometimes you use Google and it gives you an answer right away. However, maybe it connects to a database that is old and that is not up to date anymore. So we rather focus on the human part, and we say that an answer that comes from a human being is most of the times of higher value than just we say crawling information from a set of documents, for example.
Yes. So I'm seeing 2 big benefits, and one is, I think, the bigger the company, the more it's actually saving time, because you can't get to know everyone. A lot of people have different opinions of employees. They just briefly know, and I think, yeah, well, this one might be creative, this one might be that, and Starmind is giving you a way better output of looking for the right person. That saves, I mean, I don't know, does it save a lot of time?
Yes, definitely. That's one of our main, let's say, benefits that we also sell to our customers and that we also hear back from our customers. It just saves time.
Yeah.
Because 50% of the questions that are asked are answered within, or new questions that are asked are answered within 1 hour. And over 90% are answered within 1 day, and that doesn't even take into consideration all the questions that Starmind can directly answer without, let's say, bringing another expert in. So yes, time saving is a big part of the benefits.
But if I'm thinking about that again, you need to have a critical mass of employees where you don't really feel like knowing each other anymore, right? Like if I'm a startup with 10 people, I probably won't need Starmind, but where does it start? With 100, 200, or any number? I mean,
you are totally correct. It needs a critical mass so that it works. I mean, nobody has an incentive to ask a question on Starmind if you're just 10 people and you can just go at the end of the floor and go into the office of your colleague and just ask the question, right? Yeah. So we usually say that with, let's say, at least 500 to maybe 1,000 employees, Starmind is able to work properly. That doesn't mean that we don't have customers with less than 500 employees. We actually do have these and they are quite successful, but they maybe then bring other factors that are crucial. For example, most of the employees are working outside of the office, so you never actually get to see each other. So Starmind brings a value. We have also seen that during COVID-19, the usage rate have skyrocketed because people all of a sudden, they work from home. They cannot just go around the corner and maybe ask someone or ask themselves through the organization, because doing that on a virtual basis just takes a lot of time. Yes. So Starmind really showed a lot of additional value if people are more and more working from home. And that's what I'm saying. Usually we start with 500 to 1,000 users. It still works with smaller companies, but let's say the prerequisites have to be there.
All right. Yeah, well, it makes absolute sense. And there's one more thing that I just figured. It's the first AI company that is actually bringing people better together, kind of, isn't it? I mean, if the company is very huge and you don't know people, we just had that, right? And at the same time, this AI is not like, this is what you hear a lot about digitalization, right? Taking away the job, it's just getting to use the other employees that are working with you better.
Exactly.
It's bringing you together. So it's basically pro team human as an AI.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I think what's important to understand is that when you look at the current, let's say, I wouldn't say the current market, but the economy in general, you can see that technology has kind of become a commodity. Every company can just go into a store or speak to a vendor and buy technology and use it internally. This in turn means that no company can actually gain a competitive advantage over the other company only by having technology.
Yes.
In the future, it's going to be much, much more important to put the human to the center again and leverage the human capabilities much, much more. I've told you the story about the valuation and so on, and that's absolutely true. And I think we're also unique when it comes to that. It's not that other companies are not moving into that market. So there's this big analyst called Gartner, and they usually award companies with so-called cool vendor awards. And as soon as you have a couple of companies that have these cool vendor awards in a certain area, they open a quadrant, meaning that they can then compare companies in, let's say, a common workspace that are kind of doing similar things. And that workspace is called augmented intelligence. So what we do is we use AI, artificial intelligence, to augment human intelligence. So it's not that we are the only ones kind of doing that, but we are truly first movers and pioneers in that space. And that's also something that will become more and more important in the future. Just looking at the year 2030 as an example, how will the workforce look like in the year 2030? The situation will be that a lot of the baby boomers will go into retirement. leaving us with not enough people that can actually do all those jobs. Now, of course, some of those jobs will maybe be automized and will just directly be done by machines. However, most of these creative jobs where you need a lot of know-how, you will have a gap of people. You will not have enough people. For example, in Germany, Switzerland, there have been lots of studies about that. And there, it's going to be even more important to leverage the people that you actually have.
Yeah.
Or maybe to upskill the people that you have. But in order to upskill those, you need to understand what they currently know. So it's going to be more and more relevant the closer we get to that year 2030, and that's exciting.
Okay. Wow. 2030 already had a big meaning in yesterday's interview. It's a big number at the moment. Did I forget anything about Starmind that needs to be mentioned? Because right now I feel really flashed about that topic and about the company. Actually, I don't know where to continue. It's a positive thing. I already feel like understanding the whole cosmos, but I'm sure it's not. And where is that leading the company in the next couple of years? Are there any big changes that you feel are like right in front of your door or doorstep and
also
reaching out to already?
Also, that is a very good question. I mean, Starmind really has been riding the wave of AI in the last 10 years. We have been founded 10 years ago. And we are, let's say, state-of-the-art technology when it comes to AI-supported human knowledge management. And we have a product that is out of the box performing, bringing people together when it comes to sharing knowledge, making expertise visible to everybody. And that's really something that can be stated. Now, looking into the future, what I just told you about this year 2030, and also looking at what are the main priorities of companies coming up, you can see that one of the main priorities will be to get a better understanding of their workforce. Strategic workforce planning is a hot topic. We can see it with a lot of HR managers. You can see that when you look at the budgets that are at the moment freed up for these transformation projects in the HR skill and workforce management area. You see budgets between 700 million and 1 billion when you look at the big players in the US, for example. And I always like to state the CEO of the German Post that I think last year at a conference said that when asked what his big challenge for the upcoming years was, he exactly stated what I told you before, that a lot of people are going to go into retirement, and to actually make his existing people ready for the future and maybe train them and upskill them, he needs an understanding of his current skill situation as a whole, not only on the individual level. And at the same time, also the single employee will have more and more a need of understanding, hey, what is my actual skill set at the moment? Am I still fit for the position I have? Or maybe I see an internal position that is interesting to me, but maybe I need some additional training. So I will maybe invest in some, I don't know, education or whatever that will bring me to that level of skill that I need for another position, and so on and so forth. So everything around internal mobility, workforce planning, strategic skill management will become an even hotter topic. And I think this is also where Starmind is heading. Besides their existing, we call it knowledge management business, we will go much more, and it's really in front of the door, as you called it. It's the next logical step, because we have something precious. We have an algorithm that does something that no one else can do in the market, and I think we need to leverage that.
Yes. Do you feel like there are people out there in the companies where you're actually deploying it that they are kind of afraid at first that technology is taking over such a huge part and bringing so much transparency to not just their daily business and doing, but to about themselves? Have you had that kind of experience before?
It depends. Typical answer. The thing is, studies really show that over 70% of employees actually would like to contribute more to the company, would actually or are willing to show their skills much more. So for them, it's actually an advantage that their skills are all of a sudden visible to everybody. However, of course, there are some companies that are culture-wise rather on the, let's say, on the more conservative end. So that they say, we really need to be careful, first of all, from what data we learn, and second of all, whom we also show these skill maps. So is the skill map only visible to myself, or can I also look at someone else's skill map? Of course, we had several discussions, for example, also with workers' councils in Germany that really try to prevent, let's say, management positions to do something bad with these skill maps, right? So we need to make sure that in those companies, management boards actually agree that nothing from Starmind will be used for the disadvantage of single employees. But as soon as we have, let's say, made sure that this doesn't happen, we only had positive responses, because everybody wins. You as an individual, you win because you get answers quicker, or you know exactly who you have to talk to, or you know exactly where you have to improve skill-wise. And the same is valid for the management level.
Yes.
Efficiency is increased. You will have higher consistency when it comes to quality of output, of knowledge sharing, and so on. You have transparency, and you're able to also move your company into the direction that you actually need to when you look at skills that might be needed in the future.
All right. So in comparison to my thesis, people are actually happy or willing to be more seen within their company, because they feel like nobody really understands them, or the people responsible don't actually understand what they could do. And now the output is that they're not doing what they would actually be best in. And Starmind is giving opportunity to change that.
Exactly. I mean, we sometimes even hear in early stages of discussions with customers or with prospects, they tell us, hey, but how do you make sure that people actually answer when you ask us a question on Starmind, and Starmind identifies experts, and those experts are notified, hey, you have been identified, please answer. How do you make sure that experts actually answer? And we always tell them, this is the wrong question to ask, because it never happens. We have seen that people are keen to answer. They finally have the chance to show their skills and actually prove themselves and show that they know something. We actually never had issues with that. Let's say the challenge we sometimes faced was rather on the other side. How do you bring people to actually change their behavior and not keep on losing time and taking the phone and maybe asking 7 people until they finally get an answer, and just ask the question on Starmind? So this is an area where we have put a lot of more effort in, because introducing Starmind has a lot to do with change management. And it's change management from the question side, not necessarily on the answer side.
Yes, absolutely. Are there any, like, I was just thinking about like ethical boundaries or something, or where does it stop? I mean, in a talk that I had before with Günther Neumann about artificial intelligence, I asked him if it's actually possible to have an omniscient AI. He said no, probably not. But I think within this cosmos that we are talking about, is it actually possible for an AI to understand like everything that is happening within a company, and I'm not just talking about the categories it's clustering in, but anything. Do you think a cluster like that is possible to achieve, or like would you never go that way?
The thing is, I think theoretically it would be possible, meaning that imagine you just connect to any kind of data source and you track anything in the company, any movement, anything that anybody is doing. It theoretically would be possible, but also combining several AIs, not just Starmind or whatever,
Yes.
to actually understand the company as a whole. That's something that maybe other companies try to do. For example, the big tech companies, they are already providing, let's say, most of the companies with a set of tools that are regularly used. Just think of, for example, Microsoft Office, that is used by almost every company in the world. So they already theoretically have the data. Now the limitations come in from the ethical perspective. Should you actually do that? Should you actually learn about any single step? Are you even allowed to do that? And I think this is really where also Starmind put its limit. That's what I said before. We only learn from GDPR compliant data. Also because it's not legal to even learn from things like one-to-one conversations or emails and so on and so forth. So so this is where I would draw the line, and also say that in a closed circle like a company, maybe it is possible, not like the whole world, but in a company it theoretically would be possible. Should you do it? I would disagree, and that's also why Starmind is not doing that.
All right. Yeah, well, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely. Good pitch. I'm really, I'm convinced of that. Yeah, I never talked about numbers, but where does it start? I mean, if you have a 100 people company, just thinking about a company I'm working at myself right now, are you having any pricing models, or is it always individual on your customer with that?
I mean, the pricing model is very individual. However, I mean, the principle is pretty simple. We have a license-based pricing model where we charge per user per month, and it starts at a certain price for a certain number of users. So with 100 people, you would be below our minimum threshold, but let's imagine 500 users as a start, and then the more users you invite, the less you pay per user. Typical license-based software as a service model.
Absolutely. And then I got to log into the platform, and it's basically gathering all my data there, so out of the company into Starmind, and then I can access an external source or database. So the data is with you, right? Exactly.
So we have several possibilities where which cloud we actually use. That's something that is, let's say, determined together with the customer. The way it works when we integrate, or let's say not integrate, when we connect to other data sources, is that we kind of take the data, save it momentarily, capture the tags and skills, and save them in Starmind, and then delete the data again. So we never actually store data from other companies permanently. The only thing we actually store are the skills or the skill maps for every single employee. And on top, of course, everything that happens on the platform is stored in Starmind. So every question that is asked, every answer that is given on Starmind will be stored on Starmind. Anything else will be deleted.
All right. Well, super relevant question, especially if I think about the banking industry.
Yeah.
And but anything else probably. So data is a big topic, not just about using, but where we store it these days. And yeah, I think I don't have any more questions. This would be a very good opportunity to start a live session with you guys, but we're not there yet. But yes. No clue. Do you have anything to add? Did we forget about anything? I mean,
I think you wanted to ask about can Starmind detect certain cultures inside of a company?
oh, I forgot about that. The cultural question. Well, so you already asked it yourself. What's the answer? So yeah. How does Starmind help, or is it possible to help to create a strong culture within a company, or is that out of scope? I mean, this is where it starts with emotional intelligence. Actually, is an AI capable of having emotions, or to analyzing emotions, or bringing people together on a new scale?
So there's two sides to it, and you also asked two different questions. So I'll start with the first one.
Okay.
Is Starmind able to change cultures? Yes, it is. I wouldn't say that it is the main driver, but of course, imagine a company that used to work in big silos, meaning that every single location of the company had maybe its own culture, mistrusted the other locations, and so on. When you have something like Starmind that actually brings together expertise and knowledge independently from the silo, independently from the location, it also builds trust among these or between these locations. We had that case with an automotive company, which told us that their American colleagues kind of distrusted their Mexican colleagues, because they thought, oh no, what the people in Mexico are doing, or their solutions, they're actually not valuable. We introduced Starmind and had answers coming from any parts of the world, also Mexico.
All right.
And all of a sudden, the Americans realized, hey, the solutions there are actually highly valuable. And that kind of changed the culture. It was not solely responsible for changing the culture, but it helped. Now, to your other question.
So it was the trigger.
Exactly.
All right. So by bringing transparency, they felt, the culture changed.
Yeah.
I feel more comfortable with the colleagues, confident with the colleagues. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now to the other question, can Starmind actually detect, or can an AI be emotional? I think basically we are still very far away from having human level AI. And I always like to make this small example of the cat. If you have to show 3 million pictures of a cat to a computer or to an AI, so that the AI is able to differentiate between a cat, a dog, and a horse, that is not really intelligent from my point of view. Intelligence is a 4-year-old girl that sees a cat for the first time, maybe touches it, and then forever knows what a cat is. So-called one-shot learning, something that, by the way, is still a mystery even for neuroscientists, how that's possible. So creating human-level AI is difficult, and it's also not done only by having faster computers and by putting in more data. That's also something that one of our co-founders actually firmly believes in, that I think we first need to understand the concept of intelligence before we can create artificial intelligence. Similar to when people were trying to fly. They were replicating one by one how the wing of a bird looks like, and they were putting these things at their arms and jumping down buildings, and were just not successful. And I think it was
a good example and painful.
and and I think it was Leonardo da Vinci that was the first person that realized that you need to understand the principle of flying, the principle of wings, that it's about the profile, about the shape, that it's about the differences between air pressure below and above the wing, which makes objects fly. And the same is true for AI. So before we understand that, it's very, very difficult to have human level AI. Now, can Starmind be used to actually detect cultures and understand cultures? At the moment, no, it cannot. But it's also not what it's supposed to do. Starmind is programmed to actually understand skills and who knows what in companies. It's not programmed to actually understand the culture of a company and also tell you if a culture is healthy or not. This is not what Starmind is doing. However, I wouldn't exclude that there is some AI out there which is programmed to actually do that.
All right. Well, I think especially in this sector, we're still in baby shoes if it's about AI. But Starmind made a huge step with this, and yeah, I'm flashed. I didn't expect that this technology is already giving us purpose on that scale. That is super interesting. I hope it was interesting for you guys as well. So for today, I could continue this conversation like forever, but for today, this ride is over, but our journey continues as always, and I'm very happy that I had you here. So Alessandro, thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime. And yeah, with that, our journey continues.